them too.
I didn't get that with the mic cupped. It sounded like clean up on aisle 5.
It did, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. I was like, what?
Price check?
Price check? Yeah.
Okay, we're back in session. We have number 8 on our agenda, proposed recruitment strategies for police officers, and we have our police chief here to help us out with this. So I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Okay, thanks, Mayor, Council. So just a quick little perspective and history lesson, I guess, on law enforcement recruitment and training. So I started in 1983 as a police officer, and in 1983, the standard procedure was to hire someone off the road, off the street. So an agency, any given agency in the state of Utah would put out a job listing in the local paper, take applications, do the testing, hire someone, and then they would send them through the academy. So that was the standard operating procedure. They would pay their wages when they went through the academy, and that's what happened with me. And that went on for several years, and I'm thinking somewhere around 1990 or so, there was such an overabundance of people who wanted to be police officers, to get into the field, that I think those in power at the time decided that there might be a better way for cities and jurisdictions to save them a little bit of time and money in their hiring practices, to where they opened it up so that an individual, because there were so many people applying for positions, they opened it up to where individuals could self-sponsor themselves to go through a police academy. So they opened up these satellite police academies around the state. Initially it was only one police academy in Salt Lake, but they opened up these satellite academies around the state where people would pay their own way, make their own application to the academy, not hired by any agency, so just people off the road, had to pass a background, pass an entrance exam, pay the money, and they would go through their training and self-sponsor themselves, and then they would become certifiable, which I think we're all kind of certifiable when you think about it. But they become certifiable, but they're not certified until a police agency or a law enforcement agency actually hires them, and then it activates their certification or the training that they took through the academy. So that's been the method that we've been operating under for a number of years, and that's still the case right now. We do have these satellite academies out there, and Post itself, Peace Officer Standard and Training, have these sessions where people can just put themselves through. As you're well aware, the number of people interested in law enforcement has gone down significantly. The need continues to rise, and our academy classes, our self-sponsor academy classes, are going down. I know that you were provided with a copy of some news articles in relationship to what's going on in the circles of law enforcement. The population of the state of Utah is getting more and more, but we're not keeping up with the amount of officers. So 10 years ago versus today, we've got 2% more officers, but 13% more population. So there's just less and less incentive for people to go through that process and put themselves through the academy, and then basically hope to get a job. So I don't want to show any disrespect for those individuals that put themselves through the academy, but not all of them are good material for being a police officer. They're putting themselves through, and they haven't been interviewed. There's no real background, and a lot of those people just aren't going to cut it as police officers. So when you take the number that are actually going through, there's a good percentage of them that never get hired as police officers. And in the current climate that we're experiencing right now, where there is a high demand and low supply, agencies are going into academies and they're hiring people straight out of the academy or while they're still going to the academy. So the pickings are getting very slim. And of course, we're attracting people from other agencies, we're stealing from each other, just trying to keep the ranks full. More and more agencies are reverting back to the way it was when I started, to where they're willing to hire people off the road or hire people with no training after their process of interviewing, testing, and background check and psychological and all that, but hiring them and then sponsoring them through the police academy. So the state of Utah has academy classes that are set up for this purpose. In fact, there's several right now that UHP is that they've got the entire academy classes. Utah Patrol is trying to hire 100 new troopers right now to increase their force by 100, and so they're setting aside academy classes specifically for troopers. But they do have academy classes that are available for agencies to stick people in there. So how this kind of came up recently, we have had one of our officers resign. He's going to work for JetBlue. Yesterday was his last day, so we're in need of filling that position. We had an individual whom we've known for years. He's an asset protection employee at one of our local big box stores, and just a very, very capable, very good, street smart, educated guy that wants to be a police officer. So as we looked at him, he said, man, I want to come to work for you guys. And everybody on the department, all the line officers, everybody is like, hey, this is a good guy. But the problem is he hadn't been through the police academy. So in that particular situation, we all agreed that it would be beneficial to go ahead and take that, hopefully hire that individual and sponsor him through the police academy. And it would be worth the extra 15 weeks that we would have to wait for him to become available to us, knowing the quality of the person that we would be hiring. So, and that's what it kind of goes to, is the quality. We want to maintain good, high quality of individuals. So what I'm asking for is just the permission, basically, to have that as a tool in my toolbox, the availability of saying we can hire a person that hasn't been through the academy yet and pay them while they're going through the academy. We could have it at a lower entrance wage, and then once they graduate from the academy, bump it up to where it's more in line with what you would be hiring someone that has already been trained. But just to have that as an available tool for me to reach into my tool bag, if we have that situation. Obviously, it's preferable to hire someone who has already been through the academy. We don't have to wait that 15 weeks for them to go through. But if we're looking at our pool of people and we just don't have that star, that person that we're going, hey, this one we really want, maybe we can dig a little deeper and find someone. I do have, right now I've got 2 individuals who are not certified, but they want to apply with us. And so I just want to have that availability. And in talking with the city manager, his feeling was that this was the decision that the council ought to weigh in on, because there is an expense related to it where we are paying a person's wages while they're going through the academy and essentially not getting anybody on the road working for us during that period of time. So that's what I'm here asking asking for.
So what would be their total outlay? So if we said, we want this person, we start with them, and it turns out they get to week 14 of the academy and decide they don't want to be a police officer, or they fail out of the academy, how much would the city be on the hook for?
So it would be for their wages for that period of time. It's about a 15-week period of time. If we're starting them, you know, it would be something around $17 an hour or something like that, I would estimate.
At a discounted rate is what you're suggesting?
Yeah, at a discounted rate of what we would normally hire someone at.
Mm-hmm.
So
What benefits would we pay on that, Chief?
you're probably better at
Well,
making that estimate.
do we pay retirement right
You'd
from
have
the
to,
beginning?
they're-
Yeah, I think you would have to pay all the full
You have to
Even
pay
though
all
benefits.
even though they're not certified, we still have to pay retirement on them?
If they're an employee.
Yeah, but if they don't
Right.
last the 15 weeks, it's not vested, is it?
No, but you would still be paying
and
during that period
contributing,
of
so
time. You would pay the.
If we're using the police retirement rate, that's 34%. Then you figure another 10% for FICA, workers' comp, those kind of things. So you're talking about 44%. You wouldn't have to provide a vehicle and equipment at that until they graduate.
Right.
So 17 and 18, you're looking at 35,000 plus another 50, almost half again for a whole year. And then you take three, and then you take a portion of that, what, 15 months, 15 weeks?
It's roughly a little over 3 months. 3.5 months, I think. Almost 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a third of a year approximately, and
Yeah, about 4 months.
when I did this before, I was thinking in the $20,000 to $25,000 range for, it might be a little high.
Just in the wages, and then how much does the academy cost?
Well, no, the way,
Or
that's
including the academy?
wages and benefits
Yeah,
for a third
the-
of a year. Is that about right, Jake?
In that case-
20,000,
I'm sorry.
about 20,000, I think.
So in that case, the academy is covered. The state of Utah would pay 100% for their academy course. We would probably have to provide some ammunition. So there would be a little bit of expense there, but not much.
So 20,000 plus.
And this would be something that would be kind of more or less a last resort, because it would be better for us to find someone that was already certified that we could put on the road immediately and go through our field training. We have a 3-month field training that we put them through here after they're certified or certifiable.
I asked Lisa the question, what realistically could we ask in the way of a commitment in return, and the ability to recover some of the cost, if at all? And Lisa, you want to speak to that?
Well, we can't contract or require someone to continue to work for us. So you can't say you have to work, but you could, what we do with our tuition reimbursement, we do provide that if you don't stay for a certain amount of time, then you're going to pay us back for the amount of money we put into your tuition. But, so, you know, one thing may be to say, okay, it would have cost you $6,500 to go to this
yeah.
class, and so, you know, on a pro rata share, if you give us a year, or if you give us 2 years, you know, so have that incentive built in, that if he gives us a year, then we have, you know, $3,000.
I'd like to have some kind of a hook there.
Yeah, I think you could have a contractual
Yeah.
arrangement for some sort of educational benefit in accordance with our policy. We have a policy that requires them to sign an agreement that if they leave within 2 years after having the city pay for some of their education, that they would pay us back.
And just to, again, context, currently, right now, I polled other chiefs at the last Davis County Chiefs meeting that we had, and asked them which agencies are doing this. So Clearfield, Bountiful, Farmington, and Syracuse are offering this as an option in their hiring practices currently.
Did you happen to ask about the hook?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, we could still do some homework on that and see what the others might be doing.
Yeah, that's my big question, is it seems like there's got to be able to write the ability to write in something to get a time commitment.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think anything that we can do to help you to have the tools you need to get good officers is what I'm willing to do. Law enforcement is one of the basic functions of government, and if we don't provide that for our citizens, it doesn't matter what we do with the parks or anything else. So I'm willing to provide you whatever tools you need.
One of my big concerns has to do with the quality of law enforcement officers out there because of the fact, so right now we have Salt Lake hiring 50 new officers, UPD 75, UHP 100, you know, and the list just goes on and on and on, and there's just not that many out there in the academies to support that. And so if we're looking at new blood, we got to get to them fast and be better than the competition and what we're offering them, which is a high bar thing to do. Or we got to try to attract them away from other agencies somehow. Again, we've got to be saying, hey, we're going to pay you better, or whatever the case may be, to try to attract them here. So it goes down to quality. We don't want to be doing the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, out of the academies that everybody else is skipping over, and then that's what's left, and that's what we've got to go with.
I think I like this one particular individual. You said that you and your other officers have been working with, that you really know his history and background, and you can't commit somebody definitely, but that's a good example of somebody that looks like they'd be committed. So. Right,
he 11 years experience in the field. We deal with him on a daily basis. I mean, the guy's sharp, and every officer on the department said, man, he would be awesome.
Do you think, Chief, those enrolled in criminal justice programs might also be a pool?
Yeah, I mean, there's people out there who are definitely interested in being police officers. It's just there's not incentive that there is today that there was 5-10 years ago. And
so that might be a pool we could also tap into, though, somehow, is those that are criminal justice majors. And
yeah. Yep.
Well, I think the salary risk is minimal. I mean, you're going to take a salary risk on anyone you hire, and if it's the chief's discretion on an individual that has a high probability of succeeding in the academy and is the right stuff, why not support that?
The known commodity is worth a lot.
It is.
I agree with Stephanie. I think our police department is the backbone of the community, and we need to get the best individuals we can.
Thank you.
So I would propose that that the council approve the chief's request in the future, subject to agreement with Steve to do this on an as-needed basis to be able to fill his ranks.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, all the work you do.
Thank you.
And at some point, will you bring back to us what's the standard of how many officers per citizens?
Yeah, that's a tough one because there really isn't a standard. There's a lot of depends in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
you hear them throw around 1 per 1,000, but there's no standard.
there's no standard, and it's interesting. You go to agencies, you get east of the Mississippi, a town our size, we would be 3 times. We'd have 3 times the amount of officers that we have here. It's just for some reason east of the Mississippi they tend to have a lot more cops. So I don't know what
You just don't understand because you haven't lived there.
We're just good people.
So
Thank you.
Mayor, you want to drop down to 12?
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll skip 9, the mayor's report, because I'm probably like 2.5 hours on mine, so we'll move to number 12. Consider request for use of RAP tax contingency funds for baseball program. And I think we have some representatives here that you want to speak to it, the microphone. Was our famous Parks and Rec director.
I'll introduce this celebrity, Matt. Matt Layton, our baseball coordinator, has been for a number of years now, and volunteers all of his time. Although we hired him to do the job, he won't turn in any hours, and so he does all of his work for us, volunteer, and greatly appreciated, and has put together a list of requests to help enhance our baseball program. And I told him if he wants to get in on the current funds, he needs to get a list in quick, because the funds seem to be disappearing. So that's where you see the request, and I'll let Matt talk about some of the benefits and needs and things, but that's what you've got for, and the intent is from the contingency, 5% contingency of the RAP tax. I might also, how we've divided up the spending of the RAP tax, a big part of it goes to parks, and you know it's going to develop those 2 new soccer fields at the community park, and then future remodeling of Island View Park. I want you to realize that parks and recreation are not the same thing. The big R in RAP is for recreation, and the P is for parks, and they're 2 different things, and it's very possible to spend a lot of money on your parks and ignore your recreation programs, and a little bit of that's been happening. So let Matt talk about it.
Thank you for your time. I just wanted to address the baseball program and just, I guess, kind of the recreation program at large. In Centerville, really, we only have one city-sponsored recreation program, and that's baseball. The football program is a private organization. Soccer, they go through Forza or whatever recreation programs out there. A lot of our kids go play in the Farmington Recreation. Basketball is through Junior Jazz. It's not a city-sponsored program. So baseball really is our one program it's a city-sponsored program. We do have the other recreation classes that some of the kids go to during the summer months for a week or 2, but this is the one actual program that is city-sponsored, city-run. We receive just amazing support from Bruce and his staff as far as preparing the fields for play and doing all those things that are necessary to be able to run a program. So it allows me to kind of step in and put together a schedule and organize the teams, and having that support from Bruce is just huge. It would be a totally different situation if I had to prepare the fields and we had to have a group of people prepare those fields and do all those things. So the support that's received by the city is amazing. So I just want you to kind of see the big picture with baseball. We have about 500 kids that we anticipate signing up. That's kind of been the trend. It was about 300 kids 4 or 5 years ago, and it's been climbing slowly just because we've put out there a good product. The kids love it, the parents love it. And so we have, with that 500 kids, each kid plays about 2 games per week from mid-April until about mid-June. So during those months, we have about 4,000 to 5,000 individuals from our city that are at the ballpark per week. So it's a substantial amount of people that are enjoying the facilities. And so there are some things that we can do to our facilities to make them better, to make a better experience for everybody. Not that it isn't good now, but it could be better. Those items, we've kind of outlined some of the top needs would be some new fences. We have portable fences, if you've seen those, that we put them up and take them down. We're able to take them down. Bruce's staff does all the mowing, then we put them back up for the week, the upcoming week games, and then we take them back down on Friday or Saturday, and then he mows on Monday, and then we put them back up. So it's a pretty good system. And it allows those fields to be used for other things besides just baseball, which I think is nice. So we do have fences now. They're quite old. They're worn down. And when we originally got them, they were put at distances that are smaller than regulation distance. So if we're hosting a tournament, we can't use those fences because they don't fit those standards. You have to have it back a certain amount of feet in order to play, you know, a 12-year-old division has to have the fence back so far. So I think they did them small originally because the kids like to hit home runs, and that's always fun to be able to hit it over the fence. But if we want to use them for a tournament, we're not able to use those. The other benefit of having fences up for all games is because the fields are mixed use, we have a lot of soccer teams that come and want to use our fields, which we're fine with, but a lot of times they'll be using our outfield out in the grass, and then they slowly start to creep into our baseball games. If we have fences up, it's going to create that divide. We don't need to worry about there being any conflicts. And sometimes there are conflicts. Soccer moms and baseball moms don't always get along very well. So sometimes we might have some conflicts. Having fences up will solve most of those problems. There's just, you know, they're not going to jump over our fences. They'll be able to play soccer as long as they're outside the fence, then that's great. So fences for all 4 fields is kind of our number 1 priority. The second would be a batting cage. So if you're familiar with batting cages, we'd have like a metal encasing with a net around it that the teams can warm up and hit into. It's a great way to be able to hit a lot of balls in a short amount of time, and also it provides safety and protection. So when the ball's hit, you're not worried about it hitting somebody during practice. So those are kind of the highlight items that we feel that are on the top of the list. There's many other things that we love. We'd love to have a second batting cage as well. If we could have 2, that would facilitate be able to have warm-ups for essentially all the teams between games and as they're getting ready to play their games. And we've highlighted other things, which would be scoreboards. The scoreboards could be used not only for baseball, but for other sports, for soccer, for football. You know, we use the fields for ultimate frisbee. They'll come and rent our fields, lacrosse, whatever. So the scoreboards could be used really for anybody, but they would be beneficial for baseball as well. And then bigger picture items would be lights on the fields. We have the one field, the southwest field, that has lights. We'd love to have more fields with lights. It allows us to play more games. It allows us also to be able to host more tournaments. We've hosted some district tournaments. If you're familiar with our program, it's a pony affiliate. So all the different pony programs throughout the state, they get together at the end of the year and they have all-star tournaments. And so we've been able to host some of those tournaments. We'd love to be able to host the state tournament, but without lights, we can't do that just because we can't get the games in, and it isn't feasible. So lights would be beneficial, just to be able to host more tournaments, and then, you know, lights also could be used if we're interested in using it for softball or whatever the case might be. So any questions for me or anything?
Matt, I'd heard that as far as any lights go, that the Major League Baseball gives a grant. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Jeff Skidmore, who's a big supporter of baseball in our city, he and his wife did some research, and Major League Baseball does some grants for programs. Essentially, we're in the process of pursuing that, putting together the paperwork, and essentially we could get up to about $50,000 from Major League Baseball. Our chances go up obviously much higher if we get a matching from a local organization or city or whatever the case might be. So, but that is something we're pursuing.
I'm sorry, I neglected to recognize Leslie Flowers also as a member of our Parks and Rec Committee. And the Parks and Rec Committee met last week and brought this to their meeting, and they voted unanimously to support this recommendation to the City Council.
Anybody have further questions for Matt?
Well, let me apologize to both of you and to the council. I reported in the staff report that there was $11,000 to $12,000 available in the RAP tax 5% contingency for the remainder of this fiscal year. And what I forgot about was the $3,000 that the council committed for the trails consultant. So if you take that, I've handed out a page to the council, and it's actually online now. It estimates what's available is now about 8,400 or so. Would still cover the fences, but
Which would be great.
Would you rather have the fences than the batting cage?
Yeah, I think that's our number one priority is the fences, just because it does, it just makes it a better environment for everybody, for the baseball, for soccer.
I've had a
for
lot of
everybody.
boys tell me they want those batting cages.
Yeah, that is a huge request, but fences, I think, are top priority.
I appreciate people that are go-getters, and we'll try and raise funds as well too. And Matt asked if I'd put on city letterhead a letter to take the businesses to raise funds, and I like that initiative. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you know of anybody that'd like to sponsor baseball, our thought is to put their logo on the back of the jersey, and if you're familiar with the soccer program, they have the Land of Frost. We approached them. They aren't accepting any more applicants, but it's not anything that we can't do here locally ourselves. So,
You know, years ago, that's how the baseball program was totally ran. I had an old man sit me down not too long ago. Sorry if he's watching, but he is an old man. And he was telling me that the companies always sponsored and that paid for their uniforms and stuff, and the kids could play free. And he was really upset that the Centerville kids can't still play for free. I said, well, we need a lot of sponsors nowadays compared to what we used to need. But
yeah.
that was how it was. It was the sponsors did it evidently, and that's what covered the fees.
Yeah. We've been able to kind of hold our fee. We try to hold it and keep it level. We've seen the programs around us slowly hike theirs up, and we've tried our hardest to keep them manageable. And we do offer scholarships for those families that aren't able to afford it. We don't turn anybody down.
What is the fee?
Ranging from $50 up to $100 for the oldest boys. So $50 for T-ball, up to $100.
Do we have a rough estimate on how many people are being sponsored on scholarship, or?
You know, typically each year, just maybe 2 or 3 or 4. I mean, never too many, but.
And do we advertise that that's available? It's just on an as-needs basis as they come to the program?
Yeah, we've advertised that on our website, and anybody that sends me an email asking me about it and concerned about cost, I make them aware of that.
So where does that money come from, if I can be nosy?
It's just from the other registration
Just from
fees.
the pools?
Yep.
Further questions?
No, so I'm guessing that we can't authorize this $11,000.
sorry.
You always
We
ruin
can
our
authorize it, we
fun.
just can't pay for it.
We're not supposed to get the thing from the, so contrary to what position I took a week ago, we're not supposed to get the bill from the Trails guy till after the end of the year, are we?
Oh, I'm assuming he'll be billing us.
He's almost done with the work, so we saw the proposal earlier today, tonight.
Yeah.
If there aren't any changes, then he's done.
But he, if he hasn't used the whole 3,000
They
allocation,
said-
I
They
think
said he was only half done.
That's what I thought and I heard
Yeah.
too.
He's done.
I would suggest you reserve the possibility that you may need to pay him some more as this thing plays out. I mean, I wouldn't diminish the 3,000, in other words, as an authorized amount.
Yeah, he has not used it, though, but maybe
Yeah.
a little more than half.
Yeah.
But I think we could approve the fences tonight.
For sure. I think so.
When do you have to have your batting cage to have it meaningful? And how long does it take to get it?
You know, we'd like it by the season starts mid-April. That's when we would like to have the fences up as well as the batting cages. But, you know, the batting cages, we could put those up anytime during the season. You know, I don't think we need it by April 15th or anything.
How does a batting cage work when no one from the program is there? Is it shut down and locked, or is it just available at any point in time?
The one that we have proposed to get is, it would be open to really to anybody. It would just be a net that hangs down. So unless we were to take down the net every night.
So when you say a batting cage, I mean, is there a mechanized pitch, or is?
No.
Pitching machines that you could put a pitching machine in it, but they're locked up in the tough shit. Or you just have someone who's pitching to a batter.
Typically, you'll have a coach in there pitching to one of the players. He'll have an L screen up so he can be protected, but it just contains the hit ball so it doesn't go out in the outfield. You have to go chase it down.
So if we invest in a batting cage, how many years can we expect to get out of it before we have to do like serious maintenance to it? 5, 3?
I would say much more than that. The one that we've looked at, it's a long term. I mean, I would anticipate 10 years at least.
The frames would be like a chain link fence.
Sure, sure.
The
The netting would need to be replaced.
maybe 5, 6, 7, depending on how durable your netting is.
And our intent would be is to leave that up year round or take it down during the winter months?
Take it down.
After baseball season.
So only during season it's up.
Yeah,
So pretty long life then.
yeah.
Well, then I would make a motion that we approve the purchase of home run fences listed at the subtotal of $7,624.94 with a contingency to allow up to $8,000 in purchase.
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's vote then, starting with Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Appreciate it.
coming.
I would,
Thank you. We really appreciate you.
As an aside, I would encourage you to come back and see us,
Absolutely.
because I'd like to do the batting cage.
And especially if maybe you could come up with a little money to put with it, maybe we could come up with the rest.
Yeah, we have our fundraising people out right now, so.
We're really good at putting plaques on things, so if we want to name it the so-and-so batting cage.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for coming, Flowers Boys. You saw a little bit of the process. I talked to them in the hall and wanted to play the winner in checkers, but we'll have to do it another time.
Oh,
So
look, we have cookies tonight for you.
there you go.
That may help with the fundraising if you let them know that the council might be willing to work with you.
The Baseball Association does a big fundraiser every year, their opening day, and last year they had food trucks there and things, so, which didn't make a lot of money for the program, but it drew in people, and I'm sure they'll work towards making some more.
When the food trucks come to something like that, do they give you any kickback?
To try it out for the first time, we didn't. We didn't charge anything. We just wanted them to come see if it was going to work for them and if it would draw in more people to the activities. They have other activities, home run derby and things, and it did. And so we're thinking it might build a little more crowd and participation, draw people in who maybe don't have kids participating in baseball, but come to see the food, get some food at the food trucks, and maybe watch something happening or something.
So we can let them jockey for position. We say we'll put a traffic cone here. This is the $50 traffic cone. This one over here, that's the higher traffic location's the $100 traffic cone.
Yeah, if there's a big enough crowd, the food trucks, they are interested in paying a percentage or paying a fee to come and do the event. But last year we were kind of testing the waters to see if there was enough to keep them there busy for a few hours. So.
And it was pretty busy. I was there. I ate from several, so.
I did too. I enjoyed
We might be
few of
able to
those
get a
vendors.
little bit of money out of them to come this year.
Yeah, we'll put out the advertising. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we ought to put that on.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay, we are down to just reports at this point in time. So we'll go back to item 9, the mayor's report. Report from the fire district. The most recent meeting on a week ago Monday, we didn't have a quorum, but police chief or fire chief Bassett needed to get an approval for a remodel of the main station in Bountiful, Station 81, and so he sent out an email, and it looked like the 5 mayors all approved that remodel. It was in the he'd got bids, 3 bids, and it was in the realm of just under 120,000. So that's what happened there. We didn't have a meeting, so there was just that email. Since last meeting, we had a lunch with the mayor, and you're probably all familiar with that. That was an enjoyable event. We do that once every couple months, where we have 6 students from each of the elementaries come, and we have the police chief and the fire chief come as well. And then I've been trying to, on my weekly meeting with Steve, after I meet with him, to also meet with somebody in the city to answer questions. You heard how I went over the financials last week with Steve and Jake and Marcus. A couple weeks ago, I brought in Corey Schneider to ask him a few questions. We have other things set up in coming weeks. Another thing is, maybe I'll cover that on appointments. And then the last thing that I have is the UIA meeting. I went to that a week ago Monday. I do that, and then right after my meeting, George has the Utopia meeting. And the main thing that came out of that was there was a proposal passed to allow cities to receive, based on their profitability, some kickbacks and eliminate the escalating clause in the 2% escalation clause in the amount that we have debt service each year. And our 2% was about $9,000. So we have a credit on that because there are some operational costs from a few years ago that was made to each city, and our council at that time did not pay for all those operational costs. So that $9,000 is credited against what we're owing, and Steve and I have talked, and we'll have discussion on those operational costs at another time. I talked with Kurt Sudweeks today, and he said that in the future, as long as they stay profitable, they'd like to raise that to 4% next year, 6% the following year, 8% the following year. He says that there comes a point that they can't go more than that. But so that is my brief report. Any questions from anybody?
Was there any discussion of that item that we've kind of talked to them about, that I brought up, about if we were able to give them a substantial user increase, whether or not they'd do something for us?
You know, in this meeting there wasn't, because they go right into Utopia after, but I would love to, since you had brought up that idea in one city council, I'd love to get with them and go out there with some sort of proposal. I've talked with them individually, and they said they'd entertain it, but are they serious or not?
Is that something you would just want to talk privately with staff about, thoroughly explore with staff first, or would you want to ask them to get it on the agenda and talk about it as a board?
I'd be open either way.
What do you think, Bill? Would be more effective, or George?
I think Roger Timmerman would hear out whatever proposal, and that would probably be within the discretion of Utopia UIA staff to execute. I don't know that they need board approval to necessarily go after an agreement of that type, because it's within their
That's what I'm
operating
thinking too.
parameters.
And I thought last time we talked, Bill, you said you would work on trying to get a little more specific about writing up a proposal, and then the proposal could go to staff, and we could get feedback that way. But it's busy season.
I probably did, and I haven't gotten it done. I will do something.
It's like it's tax
before the next
season or
council
something.
meeting. Yeah, something
So
like
maybe
that.
have that be a goal for May?
No.
No, sooner
First
than
meeting
that?
in March.
All right.
I will get you something next week,
Okay,
and we can talk about it.
great.
Okay.
That's my report. I'll keep it brief. So we'll go to item 10, where we have a report from Councilwoman Fillmore on the South Davis Recreation District.
Well, I can be extraordinarily brief because we've just been talking rec district and parks so much in our meetings, so you guys are pretty updated on everything. We're working towards a special meeting called with the rec board for February 26th. The director's been out of town, so I don't have an update on if that's all going to be noticed and ready to go. But I do think even if for some reason it wasn't, we probably could get a meeting before our
March 6th.
first March meeting, yeah. I think that there's enough time there. And then on the Parks and Rec Committee, they're just working hard and doing a great job. They are reviewing the entire priority list now that we have actual funds. That priority list was done quite a while ago when the idea of having money to spend was pie in the sky. So they're going to be spending a few months on being really deliberate and specific about that. And then also there's a need known that we really should have created a big umbrella parks plan for the entire city. So that, you know, a professional level analysis, so that we have something in writing and in visual, just like you do in planning. But those can cost a lot of money, and so our ambitious chair has been working on seeing if we could get an intern school credit kind of situation going again, like we've used in the past. That's been helpful. So they're working on that, and I'll keep you posted, or they'll keep you posted.
Just one thing, I guess, the next time that you meet, it was interesting to hear Bruce say that, you know, obviously laying out the letters of rap and saying that he felt recreation was not really, paraphrasing his words, but an emphasis. I'd like to know if the committee feels the same way in terms of, does that mean we should be bumping up our baseball program? Is our current rec program sufficient? Should it even be continued in its current form as we look at people wanting to retire or move on to other activities and what the rec program looks like? Is it going to be the same? And I guess my interest is piqued on Bruce seemed to have a pretty strong stance on that.
Well, I think his distinction is that the parks part of a RAP tax is more of that capital improvement. You know, it is very different versus running programs. And to your question, as far as on the committee level, there's always been that question kind of floating in the air: is, are we just a parks committee or are we a parks and rec committee? Because they really have primarily just been a parks committee. And I've brought that question up a few times. Do you want to get more involved in the rec question? Which we definitely could have them do, to do kind of an analysis to present to the council as far as, you know, cost benefit and interest. You have a more tangible feel. That's something that I feel is important. I mean, when we decide to spend money on things, I think we should be, you know, evaluating, because there's lots of different polls from lots of different directions for money. And, you know, we have to put our judgments on what value is where. But I think we should always have numbers to analyze, you know, citizen units reached for dollars spent.
What is our recreation leadership situation coming into this year? I've been a little bit confused.
Well, let me just say first, on a bigger picture level is, and we talked about this last time, that as far as our sports recreation, it is, other than our baseball program, primarily, as Bruce said, run by outside programs, largely by the South Davis Recreation District, which we are a member of. Just that idea that if you collaborate with neighboring areas, you can run a program more efficiently.
Do we get anything from them besides soccer?
Yeah, junior jazz. They run the junior jazz program.
Jazz.
Soccer. They started flag football. You've got your swimming things run over there, you know. So, and then the football is separate, and the comp level soccer is separate. But the goal over there is, I think, a shared goal with the city, and that is to make those things as accessible and at recreation level as possible, so that any kid who's interested in playing can jump in and play and be active. And thus the partnership, trying to provide field space to keep that rec level available.
I do think a lot of our kids are going up to Farmington with the flag football, because I know I had grandkids up there, and it was mostly people from Centerville that were there watching kids play. It was a great sport. It was really fun to watch.
Yeah, flag football's just started at the
Yeah,
rec
it's just
district, so,
starting.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think it'll take off. It's really fun.
Yeah.
So the question was our leadership. Lisa's intending to run the program this year, I know that. She didn't have success trying to find somebody she could train to take over it, but she is going to run it this year. I can't say about next year.
She's big shoes to fill, so
Yeah.
it'll be tough.
Okay.
All right, we'll call that
Thank
good
you,
for tonight.
Councilwoman Phil-Morse. Item 11 on the agenda.
I wish I could say mine will be short, but afraid not. Let me take a couple of quickies, though, first that are not showing here. Tomorrow's work session, you all have that on your calendar, right? Okay.
Do now.
Okay. We have reserved in St. George 3 rooms. The mayor's got his own accommodations for the St. George conference. We reserved 3 rooms this morning, just so we'd have some reserved, not knowing how many of you plan to go. At this point, which of you think you may go? Bill?
I usually
Tammy?
try to prioritize it, so
Okay.
can't say for sure
So
right now.
I'm just trying to gauge whether the 3 rooms is
I do
sufficient.
not need a room. I will not read a room.
I would need a room.
Okay. We reserved 3 rooms at the Crystal Inn, which is there on Hilton Drive, pretty close. It's cheaper than the Hilton itself, the Hilton Inn and the Fairfield. Like $85 for a room with double queen beds. If there's something different you want us to reserve, let me know, but we're holding those for now. And we're holding them for...
I do not need one.
Okay. So we'll check in again with you as we get the registration information, pin it down later on. On the March 6th, I'm thinking of the possibility of an RDA work session where you can talk about the tax increment request that has come to us and the analysis staff have done on that. Involves the Fred Hale project. We either do that in a work session or we could have an RDA meeting after the council meeting. Do you have a preference? Would you prefer at a work session before the regular meeting
Work session.
as opposed to a meeting after the council meeting?
I
Work
don't have,
session for what? I'm sorry.
This is RDA, particularly to review the request for tax increment assistance from Fred Hale.
I would probably go before, as
Before,
far as I'm
please,
concerned.
yeah.
I think we make better decisions. Never know what time after might be.
But
however,
go ahead.
we did talk to the Trails Committee about having an open house type thing. Do we have any dates that are available
Well,
for
I
that,
mentioned
or-
to them, suggested the 13th, Tuesday the 13th.
Okay.
Does that sound okay as a open
It does
house?
to me.
All right. Well, Mayor and I will talk further about what happens on the 6th then.
So I take it most people feel before. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do get a little punchy.
All right.
Okay. All right. Now for the heavier duty stuff. The Waste Collection Services RFP, one of the subjects I sent you an email on today. The pushback from one of the companies is that if you express a preference in the RFP, which we have done for a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday schedule, continuing our present schedule, they feel that's a disadvantage for somebody who has to hire people and buy trucks, and they're only going to put them to use for 3 days. I talked with Lisa and Jake today about this. We think that if you want to inject a little more competition, I don't know that it will actually result in better prices, but the possibility might be that you'll have at least one more bidder than you otherwise would have if you open it up to 4 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and not express a preference for 3 days. This company is worried that, hey, if you're going to give a preference, then we can't do a 3-day and we're not going to bid. I suggest we stay away from Monday, but we could go let them bid a 2-day schedule, a 3-day schedule, a 4-day schedule, bid one or more of those options if they want to, but stay away from Monday because so many holidays fall on Monday. That's our thought. Do you have any, but you need to, I'm bringing it to you because you represent the citizens, and do you feel strongly that we should preserve the 3-day schedule?
My question would be is if when there's a holiday and they have to do the day after, will they come on Saturday? I mean, I just don't want anyone ever to get left behind. So would those Friday pickup days get picked up on Saturday?
If the holiday was on Friday. You better make a point of that, Jake.
Well, what we state in the RFP and the contract we currently have is it is the day after a holiday. We don't say what day it is. It's the day after
Right,
a holiday.
so
So if it
let's
was
say-
a Friday, it
let's say
would be a Saturday.
Thanksgiving, then they have to either double up on Friday or bump Friday and Saturday. And so as long as they guarantee that nobody gets skipped a week and there's a regular, predictable way that it's handled, then I don't care. I'm fine with that.
If we had a my recollection is we had a change 10, 12, 14 years ago. And
From like 4 to
my,
3.
well, no, I don't know if it was 4 to 3.
5
My
to
day
3.
went from Tuesday to Wednesday, which was a minor inconvenience until you got used to it.
Okay.
I'd say whatever you want to do that gives us the best price would be what
But
I
do
would
you,
say.
do you agree we ought to stay off Monday, though?
Yes.
I don't see staying off Monday. I mean, most of the Monday holidays, they don't observe anyway. We don't observe.
Yeah, which ones of them do?
Well,
they?
we give them the list of what the holidays are. And then that's what we disseminate with residents, so there isn't any confusion.
Wondering, though, if you pick up on a holiday, Monday a holiday, you often have people out of town. Is that going to be an
That's what I would
inconvenience
think.
for the
Life's tough.
the
I
residents?
think you'd have the same problem
You
if
got-
you're
you got
allowing to
neighbors.
pick up on Friday. They've got to put it out
I mean,
on Friday.
People can be out of town any day during the week. You get your neighbors to take it out. I do it for my neighbors all the time.
But I think the point is that if we have a Monday day and then every time there's a Monday holiday, and I'd like to know how many times that is, but every time there's a Monday holiday, the whole week gets bumped.
Yeah.
The fewer weeks we can have that make your day not your day is better.
But right now, the only holidays they take isn't Christmas. Don't we only have like 3 holidays
Yeah,
that
it's
they
like
take?
Christmas, Thanksgiving, and
They
On the
have.
4th.
the 4th, I think is the only.
I
President's
think
Day.
there's 5 or 6. They take
Labor
They
Day.
take Memorial Day, the 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas.
Yeah, we haven't worried about the Monday ones, Labor and Memorial.
And see, on the so Memorial and Labor are going to be the Monday, but the others are going to float.
Yeah, so 2 times a week, that's fine.
President's Day,
Sounds
Martin Luther
I'd tell
King
them.
Day.
Do they take those days? I
Well,
mean,
I don't know. I thought you were just
No, we were
identifying
just
Monday
saying
holidays.
what the
Which
ones
ones they don't
now
The
work.
are
ones
take
that
off.
stagger are
They
garbage.
picked mine up yesterday.
Okay.
They don't take it off.
So do I hear you saying leave it open to anything up to 5 days a week for pickup?
You know where I stand. When I talked to you this morning, I'm like, Bill, I just want to get me a good price.
Okay.
That's the best price.
So,
So as long as they understand, they got to get it all picked up that week, though.
That's
Right.
right.
Okay?
no more than 1 day past your regular pickup day.
Okay.
Right.
That's all right? Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Oh, I was going to ask Bruce to stay. Oh, well, I'll speak for both of us. This next one, I'm going to go over there so I can point to,
Could I
Yeah.
interject a cheerful miscellaneous while you're walking over there?
cheerful.
Yes. Well, we authorized up to $1,000 for the museum to get fire protection of some sort, and they managed to get 2 carbon monoxide sensors and 2 fire extinguishers for $200.
Yeah,
And those are there and functioning.
that's good. I was estimating 200, so that's what it turned out, huh?
200.
Okay.
Yay.
Where's our bag?
bonus.
Every little bit.
As some of this I'm going to repeat from what's in the email today, but recently we inquired of the Army Corps. We checked in with the Army Corps to make sure that we could put a futsal court in the northwest corner of the park without violating some wetlands requirements. We've known, the current staff has known there's a bermed area there, and we had heard from longtime employees and former employees that that bermed area was supposed to become a wetlands at some point. So that's why we inquired of the Army Corps, is it okay for us, we actually brought in a wetland scientist recently to look at the area and give us some backing in our request to the Corps that, hey, we no wetlands here, let's let us convert it to a futsal court. So in reviewing that request, the Army Corps dug into their files and discovered in 1990, I've attached this now, you can find it on Novus, 1990 letter or submittal of a mitigation plan by the city when the city was developing Community Park. There's 2 acres on the northwest corner that was jurisdictional wetlands. Would you pull that one up, Jake?
Is that that
Brett?
last one?
That would be, no, it would be the second one. And then you'll have to scroll through
To get to the map.
to a map, a drawing. Here we go, that's it. Go ahead a little more. Scroll it up. Yes, right there. This area, the northwest corner. So the city wanted to, of course, develop that into park and had to submit a mitigation plan. And that mitigation plan, I've learned in the last week or so, says that, and the Army Corps accepted it, says that we will replace that 2 acres of wetlands by constructing an irrigation pond in that northwest corner that will be a wetlands. And hence, that's where the bermed area comes from. Which I had some knowledge of that idea, but I didn't have knowledge that part of the mitigation plan was also, next, go on up. Okay, here's the bermed area. The part of the mitigation plan was widening and enhancing the swales along the frontage road, the west edge of the park, to something like 30 to 50 feet wide, and planting wetland stuff. And the next one up, Jake, and also part of that mitigation plan was along the south side of the park to widen and enhance the open drainage channel there, all the way down to all the way down to this house here on 400 West, where the water daylight's behind it. And that was supposed to be widened to something like 20 to 30 feet, wetlands vegetation. Oops. So the Army Corps asked to meet with us on site. It happened last Friday. Mr. Wilson, Matt Wilson, acknowledged that the Corps no longer, but the Corps has learned that requiring that kind of mitigation almost always fails. It's not maintained, not monitored, not maintained. The outcome, almost in all cases nationwide, when you have these little pieces of mitigation on site, doesn't work long term.
Or never happens.
Or in our case, didn't happen. Yeah. And that now their preferred solution is off-site mitigation, buy into a mitigation bank. Now, in 2008, and I made this argument to Mr. Wilson on Friday. In 2008, Jake, scroll on up. No, I mean down, further down in the document. Let's see. guess it's not part of that attachment. The third attachment? Yeah, right there. So in 2008, go to the map, the drawing, there you go. Get that one up there. After we bought the 6 acres, or we entered into a purchase contract, it took us several years to pay for it. But that was about 10 years ago. We entered into that purchase contract. And soon thereafter, we went through the process of redelineating the wetlands on that 6 acres because it was showing about 4 acres, as I recall, as wetlands. And we felt confident that we could get it reduced, which we did. We got through the redelineation process, submitted an application in 2008, a mitigation plan, a redelineation that reduced it down to this. And showed on this side, the south side of the existing part, just a ditch. No wetlands really, just a water channel. And he admitted on Friday that they didn't, that when we submitted this, they did not pick up on this earlier wetlands permit requirement. By the way, we submitted this in 2008, and 5 years later, they still had not approved it. We didn't press them in that period because we didn't have money to go forward. But when it came time that we thought we were about ready to go forward with this project, we reminded them that they hadn't reacted to our application, and they immediately responded and approved it as we had submitted it. So the wetlands was reduced to this. I tried to argue that, well, don't hold us responsible for the south side here when you approved a later submittal that did not define that. So where we are now is that I'm waiting for a letter from him in which he will tell us here's what we would recommend, and I expect it will say, in place of the earlier plan, buy into a mitigation bank. He said that one of the issues unresolved, which will have to be resolved, is whether they give us, whether for this 2 acres of wetlands that was taken out of wetlands back in 1990, whether they will require only 2 acres of buy-in in a bank somewhere, or whether it will be something more than a 1-to-1. And typically he says it's more than a 1-to-1 when you buy in a mitigation bank elsewhere. But he gave me reason to believe that it's probably going to be, it will be somewhere between 1 and 2 acres per acre, maybe more between 1 and 1.5. I believe he will try to minimize it as much as possible, but as much as he can justify, I guess. So your next question is going to be, what does it cost to buy into a bank, right? So Bruce made that call on Friday to the Machine Lake Mitigation Bank, which is by Willard Bay. It's apparently the only one up in this area. That's the one that the Army Corps fellow mentioned. Per acre is $55,000. So we're looking at, I'm going to guess, between, if it's 1 to 1.5 acres we end up with, we're looking at $110,000 to $165,000.
Maybe we could just buy some wetlands up by the New West Davis corridor. There's a lot of wetlands that they've had to dodge up there. Maybe we could pick up some of that cheap.
It's an interesting point.
Me and Stephanie will go out door to door to those farmers. We'll find some, won't we, Steph?
If you buy into somewhere else, I think it has to be an approved bank of some, that, you know, that they've accepted and being regulated and so forth.
So let's berm up around our groundwater tank, plant some bulrushes on that and say it's wetlands.
Well, you won't convince them to approve that, I'm pretty sure. So where does that, I've given you this handout again.
Well, hold on a second.
Yes.
So then the next question is, can we use the bermed area?
Well, well, yes, if you
Okay.
if you buy off-site, then yes, it eliminates all these requirements.
So this,
Right, but what if we kept the bermed site and only bought off-site for the linear stuff?
Oh, you mean actually use the berm site? I did ask that question, and I assume he'll respond to that, but I got the understanding that they prefer
get us
this
to pay.
off-site stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They would prefer it or demand?
They would prefer the off-site stuff where it's consolidated into large
I mean, there's, what, go ahead.
large wetland areas that are consolidated so that there's some value, real value.
Well, I
rather than-
understand that, but there's preference and then there's written agreement, and we might want
Well,
to,
I was just gonna say, we have an approved plan, so you could build it to that, but if you have to amend that plan, then.
Well, here's
Plans, 'cause they wouldn't.
here's the other way they have us over a barrel, so to speak. He said that there's penalties built in so that as you delay the mitigation plan, every year you delay, there's a higher and higher penalties that can be
Gotcha.
applied. And he says, I'm going to try to avoid those in your case. So,
seems like you'd have to have noticing of the fact you haven't mitigated. I don't think that you can say, hey, it's 30 years later, we just noticed, we're
well,
gonna
they
fine you
did.
for that.
Well, this is another letter he sent me was in 1994. They did remind the administrators at the time that we hadn't implemented the plan.
right, so at least we have that in 2008, they didn't catch it either, right?
Right.
That's where I'm going. It's like you sent
Yes.
us one
I
Denning
mean,
letter
that's
back
a-
in 94. That's not
Yeah.
enough recollection.
Yeah. Right. So let me go back over here, unless you got questions about this.
So what are the penalties if we just,
Don't do anything?
yeah? I mean, how long's it gonna take them to forget about it again?
We'll agree to mitigate it and get back to him on that.
I don't think we can.
This is an expensive park. How many times has the cost of this park gone up just on the time that I've been on the council?
Well, this is the cost of the old park,
Yeah.
just being realized now.
Yeah.
But it's really a cost of the old park,
The old portion of the park?
the old community park. I mean,
The old portion,
yeah,
yeah,
the
the old.
original,
The original portion,
yeah,
yeah.
right.
Expensive and.
Pardon?
lengthy. And it's taken so long.
So what I've given you here, I handed it out earlier because the bottom part of it gave you that number on the RAP tax contingency. But I also wanted to give you a framework here. Is it going to be possible for us to buy into the wetland banks and still meet our funding schedule here? I guess the answer is a conditional yes, assuming we get well, you can see, I did this at 2 points in time, this update. If you see the first arrow, it takes the 283,858 negative number, which was the funding deficit for Community Park Phase 3. And you add to that, increase that deficit with what was authorized for the museum. And then you offset it with the $500,000 loan, showing $188,283 still available. So I have confidence that we can go forward that far. Then the next point there is, are we going to have sufficient funding for the Island View Phase 1 project on the schedule that's anticipated? So you take the 125,110 negative number, and again add the museum to that, and then you offset it with the 500,000. And it shows that, yes, if all of our assumptions are correct, then yes, we'll be all right for that phase as well. We'll have this 347,000 still available after Island View Phase 1. But as I said, the assumption is that we'll receive the amount of RAP tax shown here, 318,000, and that the match for Island View Park Phase 1 will be the 677,000 and not something significantly higher than that. So with those assumptions, I mean, we could even with a lot less impact fees, we could still come out okay. But if you get a lot less impact fees and a lot higher costs for Island View Phase 1, then you'll have to be making some decisions about that.
I'm having a hard time coming down this column of numbers.
Okay, what
So
would you like me to explain?
You got 64,000. So I'm just a poor accountant.
Before it's 10:30 after a long day.
Do you want me to start with that number, Bill, and kind of talk down through it?
Well, bear with me just a minute while I try and, every time I take 2 steps up, I get more confused.
By the way, I'm still concerned about Island View. We just, for our spring cleanup, said we're going to use that parking lot. And then we turn around and say, and we're going to get rid of that parking lot. I don't think we've thought this through far enough to make it a worthwhile project. Just my 2 cents.
Bill, you want any?
Well, I guess my problem is that it looks to me like we're using the $500,000 loan twice.
No, I'm just,
Well,
That's
that was my
At the end of the
question
day, that's
also.
my hang-up.
If that second round of numbers that you did that ended up with 347,031, that includes the 188,283, right? That's what I was seeing as well, right? And so it's a timing thing. So you're saying at this point, at the end of funding of the community park phase 3, then we would have this amount left.
this 188,000.
Right. And then to follow through on the conversation we just had, if we had to pay a bill to the Army Corps of Engineers that might take away 100 to 150,000 of that, we'd be fine.
Yes.
Right. But assuming we haven't paid that bill to the Army Corps and that 188 rolls over and the rest of the math happens, then after we've done phase 1 of Island View, then we have this number left.
Right.
And so.
Assuming we haven't paid anything for the mitigation.
Right. So then let's say we then we pay for the mitigation and we might be down to as little as 200,000, say. So then the risk is if none of the impact fee comes in.
Right.
Then we're short.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if half of the impact fee comes in, we're fine. If
Yes.
all of the impact fee comes in, we're fine.
Yes.
So, does that help it make sense, Bill?
I'm with Bill. I see this 500,000 twice.
Well, right, that's what I just walked through and explained. That it's a timing thing, so. So neither of these, so it's just saying at the point in time where we've paid for community park phase 3, we have 188. At the point in time where we've paid for Island View phase 1, we have 347, according to these input numbers. But that's not considering whether or not it's assuming that the impact fees come in, and it's not minusing what we owe for Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
So it's going to be very, very tight, much tighter than we anticipated.
Right.
Yeah, okay, I can get there.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing that I guess is a potential silver lining is you've got zero impact fee for the first half of
Right.
the next fiscal year.
Right. Yeah, the only impact fees I'm showing here is, for the next 2 years, is the apartments.
And so even if only half of them come online, there might still be a few houses.
Some
that
few homes,
push in
yeah.
that.
Mhm. Yeah. So I wanted to show that to you in connection with this bad news, but, okay.
Okay.
I'll keep you apprised of the communications from the Army Corps. We'll have discussions as needed.
So Lisa, I'm probably grabbing at straws, but what do you know at contractual law? I mean, if they looked at it in 2008 and signed something, did they sign something?
They gave us a permit finally in 2013, 5 years later, after letting it sit in their
Right,
office.
so you told me this
But
morning.
that was for different property.
Well,
Involved?
but it did involve the South Side Channel.
Yeah. I mean, the only argument you have would be some sort of estoppel claim, which usually you don't have against the federal government. But,
And the cost for fighting it
I
would
mean, I think we'll be
exceed
doing well if they're
fee.
nice to
Yeah, you
us.
can eat up to 150 pretty quick.
So,
Could
Let's
we
hope
buy
they're
some more
not
credits at the same time?
as
Close off our
punitive as
other
they could be.
Culverts? This is drainage ditches. They've always bothered me in Centerville.
Like on the frontage road, you mean, the
They're
other-
all- Yeah, on the frontage road. If you're going to look at mitigation and buying into another bank, to me, those aren't functional wetlands. That's just a mosquito breeding joke. So if there were a way to actually look at potentially getting rid of those, maybe if the Army Corps of Engineers will let us look at
Doing something beneficial.
Wholesale rate?
wholesale rate and say that we're going to establish a payment plan and we'll, because I'm hoping they don't want all up front, but if they would allow us to buy additional credits, that area, I think, that's not useful to the community at
But those-
all. It's a health hazard. I would
Those
prefer to
drain-
see those paved over.
It's
Those
not,
drainage
it's a
swales are
health
part of
hazard,
our
it's also an
drainage
accident
plan.
hazard.
They are part of our drainage plan, but if they were capped and they were not open, I think it would be better off.
There is some flood carrying capacity in those.
yeah, I mean, remember with the Woods Park,
There's
we had a
some.
lot of modeling of how we
Yeah,
use those.
yeah, that's a much bigger question.
And if I-15 floods, that's where we put it.
Yeah.
We just won't let it flood. Let's tell it to go the other way.
Well, okay, that's all I have. Sorry it took so long.
Thank you, Steve.
Next time you can't make a report with that kind of news.
Yep, reports have to be kept under 50,000 in bad news
Are
category.
we ready for a motion to adjourn?
Not quite, but
Not
quickly. Item 13, I don't believe there's anything requiring a closed meeting.
Not that I know of.
Item 14, Brandon Federico from the Trails Committee just finished his first term, and he is accepted to serve a second term. Jack Delestatius from the Community Foundation. That foundation, as you know, is kind of Jack's puppy, and I requested from Jake and Steve the 990 to see what that thing's doing. In 2017, they raised about $9,000, and most of that money went to the police drive. And so, and I think Jack did a lot of that fundraising. So when I talked to him today, I said, Jack, we got to get more fundraising going here. So I have a couple names probably for you. Can you come up with a couple names? So, you know, those are the two names I have to ask for your appointment. And I also need to bring out, there's a couple of other appointments I've delayed on and trying to stick with getting people involved in the community. No more than 2 terms, but there's some committees that, as I talk to people, you know, everybody wants to be on kind of the big ones. And so, and I know I sent out an email to all of you, and I haven't got any names for any other of your committees as well, too. So I'll be looking to call a couple of other people as well, too. But that's what I have tonight for you.
The two names, Brandon and Jack.
Brandon Federico, Trails Committee, and Jack Delestatius Community Foundation.
I'd make a motion that we support the mayor on those 2 appointments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else? Motion for adjournment?
Yes.
So moved.
Aye.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.